Okay, everybody. So what this video is it's going to be the lecture, sorry, lied, not the lecture video. It's going to be the video for Lab 10B. Now, Lab 10B, if you scroll down here, is essentially nothing to submit. You just type done in a box and hit the submit button, okay? So mostly what this video is to kind of just walk us through a little bit of stuff here. Now, just so we can see it before we see it, if you know what I mean. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this code from the previous Lab 9B, which do we have a Lab 9B in this class? I might not have posted this for you guys. I'm not 100% sure. Let me just double check. Where are we? Do we have 9B? We don't have 9B. So we don't have 9B, so this is actually not coming from a previous lab for you guys. Um, So I'll talk a little bit about this now. So I'm going to create a new class. Now I'm going to call mine Lab 10B because this is Lab 10B. So I go over to Eclipse. I'm going to make a new project. Um, File, new project, Lab 10B. Open that up, click source, new class. I will call that Lab 10B as well. I don't need to check the box for public static void main because I'm going to delete whatever's in there anyway. So I get a blank class. I'm going to copy this in here, all the code here from part one. Now, when I do that, this is not going to run. It's not going to run because my project is named lab10b.java and it says lab 9b all over the place in here. There's like 3 locations. So everything needs to match. So if my file is called lab10b, then this should be lab10b. This should be lab10b. And down here, it says new lab 10B. So there were 3 places that said lab 9B that I had to modify. Okay. Now, when I've got that done and I click run, I should get our code to run. And so this was what I had written previously, which is simply a green box and a black rectangle. Now, there's a lot of code here, right? I mean, well, it's 28 lines, so maybe not a lot, but there's a lot of stuff here that we haven't really seen before. So there's this thing here. This is a method like main, but it's not called main. All it does is it sets a size of a window to 800 by 600, and it sets a background color. It didn't have to be in its own thing, but it is. Our main, which is all we usually write when we're writing code, creates something called a J-frame. That's going to be a window. It sets the title to game window. The next line makes the close button work, right? When I run this, I want to close this. I'm on a Mac, but like there's a close button, right? Well, we want that to work, so that makes that work. This says add new lab 10B. When you do new lab 10B, that's what runs this code up here, which sets the size and the color. Frame pack. Um, Frame pack sets the window sizes better. It's kind of optional. Um, Set the location where the window is going to appear and make it visible, right? So a lot of this stuff, right? You wouldn't like really spend a lot of time learning this. You kind of just, okay, I need to start from a blank window. Let me just take a starting code like this. So this is just starting code that opens a blank window. Now, of course, it's not completely blank, right? Because it's got a green rectangle in there. And so there's a method called paint component, and this method here is what's drawing the green rectangle. And so you can go in here, like it says set color dot green. I mean, we can change that. We can make it red, color dot red. Now it's a red rectangle, right? Yellow. Now it's yellow. right? There's other ways we can type in like numbers for the colors as well, but color is in this class, and there's a bunch of colors predefined, so we can pick from the list if we want to. So we set the color to whatever color we want, and then this draws a rectangle. So the X and the Y coordinates are 100 and 200, and the size is 50 by 50. Now going back over here, I'm gonna click home again. Huh, strange. I could have sworn I recorded a lecture video for that lab's that lab 9B, but I do not see it. Okay, so strange. All right. Regardless, um, we can draw a rectangle. You can play around with the position, right? Like if I change this to like 300, this is an X coordinate. So then moved it further to the right? X coordinate and Y coordinate. If I put like 0, 0 for the coordinates, we can see it's up here in the top left corner, right? So 0, 0 is top left corner. You might think it's down here. Nope, top left. You can change the size, right? So like I can change this to like 20. This is not the size, this is the position. 20, make it you know, 400 by 30, right? So now it's width. Oops. Width is 300 pixels wide, sorry, 400 pixels wide, and its height is 30 pixels tall. Okay, so this is essentially where we were in the previous lecture or previous assignment that I think I didn't assign to you guys. So you guys didn't have to do it. But all it said was like kind of play around with this fill rectangle and see if you can change it. Also, like you could change it to other things. Like I can do fill oval. Um, Now it's a ball. Okay. Now you have all these things that you could do here. And we could look them up and see what we have. Like this is fill oval is part of the graphics meth or the graphics class. So like if we do Java graphics, I'm just going to type in fill rect. Um, and we look at the documentation for this. You'll see that there's a bunch of them, so we can see what they have. Um, There's clear rect, clears the specified rectangle by filling it in with the background color. Okay. There is, going down here, there's draw oval, draws the outline of an oval. Draw rect, draws the outline of a rectangle. Um, Fill oval, fills an oval with the current color. Right? All these things. So we were doing fill oval was what we were just doing. There's fill rounded rectangle. There's fill rectangle, there's fill polygon. There's like a bunch of these things, right? So there's different commands for drawing stuff in our rectangle. So if we're going to write a game eventually, which we are soon, then this is stuff we wouldn't want to know how to do is to draw into a window. So this is just a getting started thing here. Now coming back over to the actual lab, we're just saying, hey, we're starting this right here. And what we need to do is we need to make stuff able to move eventually. Now we're going to do it all from scratch when we get to the point of we're going to do it all from scratch when we get to the point of writing a real game, which will probably start next week, I think. Um, but for now, what we want to do is just kind of see these things a little bit. So if I want to make something move on the screen, I'm going to need a timer that times things to like 1/60th of a second. That would give us 60 frames per second animation. So I have to put Java Swing Timer as one of my, oops, one of my includes. So to our stuff up here, I can just add that import timer. So now we can time things. Then what you have to do, there's a lot of code here that we don't need, so I'm not going to copy paste everything. Um, Once we have a timer, we want to make the timer work. So in order to make the timer work, we need essentially this code right here. And I will put that here. So timer, that's the timer that we have here. And timer is going to be a timer called new timer. And it's to get 60 hertz, 60 frames per second, you take 1,000 milliseconds and you divide it by 60. And you'll get how many milliseconds the timer needs to be. What's it complaining about here? Um, what? Is it really? I don't know what it's complaining about. That 32? Was this okay? This was okay. I don't know quite what it's complaining about right there. Yeah, I don't really know what it's complaining about when I tried to copy paste this in. It seems fine to me. Oh, there's no update yet. Okay, sorry. So what this is doing is it's setting a timer. The timer is going to be 1/60th of a second, and 1/60th of a second, every 1/60th of a second, it's going to call a method called update, which is supposed to do something, and it's going to redraw our window. So right now we haven't written this, so if I comment that out, the code should be fine. We run this and nothing's changed, right? The only thing that's changed that you can't tell is this window is now actually being redrawn every 60th of a second. You just can't tell. So the reason you can't tell is because this update function doesn't exist yet, which is the function that would move stuff around. So if I create this, which we haven't learned how to write our methods yet, that's what we're going to learn later this week. But if I do public void update like um, this would be where I could move around my, um, in this case, I guess what I have is I've got a yellow ball, right? Let me make the ball a little bit bigger. Now, the issue, not the issue, but an issue is that I've got this yellow ball that I'm drawing in my window. I'd like to move it, but in order to move it, I'm going to need a variable for like where it is. So um, I would have to come up here and add variables. So I can say like, I'm going to call it a ball now, ball X, int ball Y. Okay. And maybe what I can do is I can set those um, to start with to 50. And then down here, I can change this to ball X and this to ball Y. So now I'm using variables. So when I run this, right, the ball is here, but I'm drawing it at this position 50-50, which means I can now change the coordinates of the X and the Y coordinates and the ball could move around. And that's what I can do in this update function. So if I just take like the ball X value and I just say plus equals 5, what that would be saying is add 5 to the X position every frame. Does that make sense? Because the timer happens once per frame. And once per frame, it calls update. Update moves the ball by 5. So just adding this line, ball X plus equals 5, and I run it, let's see what happens. Look at that. There it goes. It just keeps going. Uh, So add 5 to the position every frame. Now, we saw a problem with this is that, yeah, it goes, but uh-oh, it just goes all the way off the screen, right? But you can even change that because what you can do this. What if the ball position, if it's too big, how big? Well, how wide is our screen, right? Think about this. Way up here, it says that we're 800 by 600. That's the size of the window. So how about if the ball X goes greater than 800, what if I set it to 0? Then what? So it goes, it goes, it goes. Uh-oh, comes back over there. You see? So now if it leaves the screen, when it goes past 800, it goes back to 0. So if it goes past 800, it goes back to 0. Interesting. Well, what if you do exactly the same thing, but you did the same thing for the Y value of the ball? So what if the Y value of the ball, and it's not 800, the height is 600, so change that to 600. Now, if that goes over 600, we could set it back to 0. And then you could do something like this. We could move the Y, let's say, plus equals, let's not make it the same number. Let's make this one 7 and this one 2. Amazing, right? So we made this ball, and the ball can now move at 60 frames per second, and it can just move anywhere on the screen. There's a lot of other stuff we could do too. So like one thing we could do is we could add variables here for the speed. So I could say ball X. Well, let's just call it ball speed. No, let's call it ball X. Ball velocity X. And let's just make that like 3. And then let's do ball velocity Y. And I don't know, make that 5. Just different numbers here. So if I have variables for those, then I can now use ball velocity X, ball velocity Y. Nothing really changes here, right? We have the same basic thing happening. But now we can do other things here. Like how about if the ball goes over 800, rather than setting it back to 0, which wraps it around to the other side of the screen? What about if the ball gets too big? If the ball value goes past 800, what if we take its X velocity and we negate it? That would turn the ball around. Now, when the ball hits the right side of the screen, it's not going to go through it. It bounces. And then we could do the same thing for the Y value. What if the ball Y value goes greater than 600? Then its Y velocity should go the other direction. So now it bounces off the right side and the bottom. Uh-oh, it doesn't bounce off the top though. It doesn't bounce off the top. So what if you want to make it bounce off the top and the left? So what if the X value is less than 0? We should do the same thing. What if the Y value is less than 0? Then we should do the same thing. So now I think we have something that bounces all around. You see? So by manipulating the X coordinate and the Y coordinate, we make it move. By manipulating the velocity in the X direction and Y direction, we can make the direction of movement change. So we can make it bounce off things. Well, we can just make it change direction. Now, there's problems with this code, right? Like if I make this window big, you'll see that even though the window's big, it's still bouncing around in an 800 by 600 area, which is maybe not what you want. But that's all stuff that could be changed with a little bit more care, right? So what we're seeing here, though, is that like we started with nothing, and then we made the ball move, and then we made the ball wrap around on the screen, and then we made the ball bounce. If we look at this code's a little bit more complicated than what I have. But let's put all this code in here. It's like 20 extra lines. You see that they're doing kind of the same thing here. The only difference is, look, they're actually getting the real dimensions of the window. So they kept it a rectangle on theirs. So this is doing basically what we had. The difference between this and what we did was they can change the window, and that actually still works, right? We couldn't. Ours was always 800 by 600, but they added variables for the width and the height, and now you can do that. So what are we supposed to do there? Nothing really, just to try to, spend a few seconds of brain power trying to understand this video. Like I added the timer, and then the timer calls update, and the update was all like basically what was changing the ball, right? The ball moving was controlled by update, and then everything else just stayed the same. All right. Well, I need to stop here, and but hopefully this was mildly useful. All you need to do if I make this a view as student assignment, all you have to do to submit this is kind of go through here and then just go done and then hit submit. All right. Okay. Well, that's it for today. I will talk to you guys later.